Hello, Facebook world. Welcome to episode 2 of the 39.6 Facebook Lives. Thank you for showing up. Vina Jetty has a comment here. Yes, another today. It's like winning the lottery. So I discovered or saw yesterday that you can schedule these, and it puts a little post there on Facebook. And basically it puts it there and announces it instead of me having to make an announcement and then do a separate thing. And by posting that earlier today, it kind of made me be accountable to not cancel, because once I posted it, I had to do it, right? So it is Monday, July 16th, 2018. And we're going to continue trying to do these as often as possible, maybe not quite as long as yesterday, and talk about investing, because if you can have your money work for you, you don't have to work for your money.
Hey, let's get moving.
All right, so that brings us to our topic for today. I have another question from the Physician on Fire Facebook group. All right, so this is a really good one. It's not something that's talked about very much, but it brings in a lot of things that can be discussed in one topic, in particular about after-tax contributions. Okay, so this guy is finishing residency and will be attending starting this month in July or August, sometime soon. So finished training. And the question is, my new hospital allows you, after maxing out pre-tax contributions to the 401k, to put an additional 6% of your salary of after-tax money into the same 401k. Which is better, putting my after-tax money into my own taxable account or adding to my 401k with after-tax money? Okay, now has a couple other secondary questions. If I want to retire earlier than 59 and a half, does this change my choice? If I picked a Vanguard Index Target Date Retirement Fund in my 401k, should I invest my after-tax dollars differently into a more risky fund, being that I'm only 30 years old? Thank you in advance for your help. In parentheses, I will be doing a backdoor Roth IRA. I plan to pay off my student loans in the next 5 years and have a 15-year fixed mortgage. My goal is to invest about $50,000 a year in retirement until the student loans are paid off. That's pretty good. If the student loans are going to be paid off in the next 5 years and investing that $50,000 a year, that's pretty good. We don't know how much the person has in student loans. Average student loan burden in this country is in the 200 plus range. If you're in some states like Texas, it's a lot lower. And if you're in some schools, it could be a lot more. But that's pretty good. So a lot of topics here. And first of all, I'm impressed that this person has a very good question, seems to understand what's going on, know about the age cutoff for early withdrawal penalty of 59 and a half. It's very interesting that the IRS uses half years, 59 and a half, and for IRA withdrawals, and 70 and a half for required minimum distributions. Half years usually pretty much end in single digits, but they come back to you when it comes to retirement. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So first of all, congratulations on having your attending physician position. He's going to be employed, so that'll be a W-2 job. And so that basically means that your retirement accounts, with exception of an IRA, are subject to whatever your employer offers you. Sometimes I see posts or people will say, can I open up a solo 401k? Can I open a SEP IRA? And then you ask them, what is your employment status? Are you employed or are you an independent contractor? They say, I'm employed. I'm paid on a W-2. Well, if you're paid on a W-2, you can't open self-employment retirement accounts because you're not self-employed. Okay, so unless you have self-employment income on the side, you have no ability to put money into there. And even if you did, the money that would go into a self-employed pension, a SEP, or a solo 401k would have to come from the earnings from that side business where you're self-employed. Okay, so here, whenever you start off a new job, even before you really take the job, you really need to know what your retirement account options are, because that's ultimately part of your compensation. So some positions may offer a very wide range of pre-tax accounts. So for example, in University of Texas, you can put away 55,000 into 403b and 18,500 into the 457. So that brings you to $73,500 in just those accounts and that's all pre-tax money. That's before putting money into an IRA. Now, a lot of people who are in private practice, they may have a cash balance pension plan beyond their 401k. And if you're, for example, 40 years old, you may be able to put around $90,000 in there pre-tax in addition to the 401k. So you really need to look at what your investment options are, in particular for pre-tax money, because that really affects your net worth. At the end of a year, if you're able to shelter more money from tax, your compensation effectively is higher than in a similar job where you're not able to shelter as much from high taxation. Okay, so this particular job allows you to put in an additional 6% of your salary after tax into the same 401k after maxing out the pre-tax contribution. So let's pretend this person's earning $300,000 a year. That's the average specialty physician salary, according to, I think, the most recent Medscape survey that came out a couple of months ago. Might be a little lower because he's right out of training, but $300,000 is an easy round number to utilize. Okay, so the pre-tax contribution is $18,500. That's what the IRS determines is the limit for this year, and that is scaled for inflation. So last year and the year before, that was $18,000. This year is $18,500. So if this person is earning $300,000, okay, and is putting $18,500 into the 401k as a pre-tax contribution, that means it wasn't taxed. That's about 6% of his gross income. Okay, so 6% of his income is getting invested for retirement in a pre-tax account, and that's sheltered from taxation while it's growing. However, that's only 6% of his income. Okay, so one of my pet peeves is when high-income professionals think that maxing out a retirement account is going to leave them in a situation where they are fine financially in the future. They'll say, I've already maxed out my retirement accounts, and then they'll talk about what they're going to spend their money on, and that it's fine for them to spend the money because they maxed out their retirement accounts. Well, that might only be $18,000 or $18,500 they're investing. If you're only investing 6% of your income, you'll pretty much not be able to retire until just you basically shouldn't plan on retiring. Okay, so you need to be saving more. Ideally, around 20% of gross is a general rule of thumb. So that 6%, that 18,000 is 6%. That's not quite the 20% yet. So we should be looking for another 14% to save. Okay, so that brings us to the actual question here of what we call an after-tax contribution. So we have a 401k has three flavors. Okay, you have the pre-tax flavor, which is the best flavor. That allows you to avoid taking that income on your paycheck. You don't pay any taxes on it. It doesn't show up on your W-2. It's as if the money never happened. Okay, and if you're at your peak salary, you're an attending. That's a good thing to do, is to save money on taxes, especially if you're going to be attending salary for the full year. So maybe not the first year coming out of training, but starting the January following. Okay, what's up, Vina? Thanks for coming. So 18,500 pre-tax being the best flavor. Okay, Roth 401k is the second best flavor, and for high income professionals, that to me is actually a distant second. And I'll probably take a lot of flack for this. I'm not that big of a proponent for the Roth as much as a lot of other people are. But a Roth is the one that you'll often see other than a pre-tax, and you'll often see that in a 401k as another option. Okay, yes, you like the best flavors. Okay, now there's always the third flavor. So if you go to Costco, they make their margin because they make you buy like big volume, and then they also make you buy the variety packs. There's always one flavor in there that's not the best flavor. It just always is. So they're selling product that you otherwise wouldn't have bought if you were buying a la carte. Okay, so that third flavor is the after-tax flavor. Okay, so it's basically the worst of both worlds. Okay, so to kind of go through these flavors, the pre-tax 401k, the money never hits your paycheck. It goes directly in there, $18,500. Okay, while it's inside the 401k. So the 401k is a little house, a little shelter from tax. Okay, so anything in that 401k, any dividends on stocks, any interest on bonds, any capital gains from selling a stock or a bond that has appreciated. All of those three things that otherwise would be taxable events do not incur any tax liability. You do not have to pay any taxes because it's inside. Yeah, the orange popsicles, exactly. You have like grape, cherry, and then orange. And then you end up with a box of orange popsicles. And then you end up going back to Costco to get more orange popsicles, more of the variety pack. There's Lavina's comment. So yeah, okay. So that's the worst flavor. But okay, so that's pre-tax. We'll go pre-tax in. It will grow tax-free in the house. But then when you take it out, you have to pay tax as if it's your ordinary income. So you go through the tax brackets. Okay, so it's just as if you were earning your money as if you had a job, with exception of Social Security and Medicare. Those were already paid. When we say pre-tax, we're not referring to Social Security and Medicare. They take that money off the top no matter what, with only exception is an HSA. Okay, so if you're, for example, married in the current tax brackets, you have $24,000 standard deduction that you would pay no tax on. So if you're only paying taking $24,000 out of your pre-tax account when you're retired, you would still pay no tax. So it would have been no tax on the way in, tax-free while it's growing, and tax-free on the way out. That would be a very limited amount of money you could do that for. Okay, and ultimately Social Security will probably gobble that up. Okay, but pre-tax is the best because you're automatically getting, if you're at the highest bracket, a 37% reduction on federal tax plus your state tax. If you're like in New York, you're paying like 8% New York tax plus another 3% or 4% if you're in the city. It's a very high tax bracket cumulatively. Okay, so Roth. Okay, Roth, you still have to pay your Medicare and Social Security. Okay, you also pay your federal and state taxes to get into the Roth 401k. Okay, so that 401k is a house. Okay, it's the same house. It does not discriminate amongst the three flavors. Those three flavors, capital gains, dividends, interest, all of those three things, you do not pay any tax on anything while it's in there. Okay, so that is Roth. Now, when Roth gets out of the house, when you're retired, okay, when you're retired, you take withdrawals from the Roth 401k. You've already paid tax on it at the federal and state level and maybe the city level. So when you take it out, there's no more tax again. So a Roth contribution is what we call a tax-free contribution because you've already paid the tax, and forever, for perpetuity, that money will be never taxed again. So it's in the house while it's in there, and it's in the house basically on the way out. So taxed on the way in, tax-free growth, tax-free withdrawals. Okay. Now, the orange popsicles. This after-tax contribution, okay? Now, you're only allowed $18,500 to go in pre-tax. That is a limitation of the IRS. And that's the same. You can only put $18,500 in a Roth 401k, okay? If you wanted to split it up half and half, you could split it up half and half. But those two flavors combined, the chocolate and the vanilla, have to be no more than $18,500. That's assuming you're under the age of 50. 1 year 50, maybe 24,500, I believe. Okay, so the after tax, just like a Roth, okay, now this is the worst of both worlds. You've paid the Social Security and Medicare. You can't get away from that. You pay your federal, state, city tax on the way in. Okay, so now it's in this bucket it's been taxed, but it can't go into the Roth 401k bucket because that one is closed. So it goes in this after-tax bucket. And remember, I told you the 401k does not discriminate. It shelters all of the gains from taxation while it's there. So interest, dividends, capital gains, no taxes while it's inside the box, okay? But inside of that box, we really have two components, okay? We have what you put into it, the contributions, okay? That's like the popsicle stick, okay, on that orange popsicle. Then you have all of the gains, all of the interest, all the dividends, all of the capital gains of the increased value of the equities or stocks or bonds that you purchased, all of those gains, okay? By the time you retire, the majority of the money in there is gains, and only a small amount of it is actually what you contributed, okay? So all of the popsicle is gains, and the stick is the contribution. So the after-tax 401k, when you try to pull it out, it distinguishes the popsicle stick from the popsicle. All the contributions, you can pull that out tax-free. There's a general rule in the way we think about taxes, as you never tax the same dollar twice, okay? With very little exception to that. One of them is if you over-contribute to your 401k and you don't reverse it. But in general, you're never going to get taxed twice. So the contributions, they went in after tax. You paid Social Security, Medicare, which we disregard, but you also paid state, federal, potentially city. You paid all those taxes. So when you take it out, they're not going to tax you on that contribution again. So they keep track of what's called your basis, the amount that you've invested, okay? However, all of the gains, the popsicle portion, when you pull that out and you take a withdrawal, those gains have not been taxed. They were sheltered in the house, but on the way out of the house, just like the traditional pre-tax 401k, you have to pay taxes on the way out, okay? And you're paying it at your marginal tax rate as ordinary income. So yeah, the first 24,000 might come out at 0%, but then you're coming out at 12%, 24%, 32%. You're coming out at higher and higher tax brackets, okay, through the progressive system. Now, if you have a lot of income when you're retired, that money could get taxed at 37% potentially on the way out with the current brackets. Now, the old brackets were 39.6%. That's where the blog name comes from. Okay, so you could have to pull out your gains at potentially, let's say, 40%. Now, the question is, what's the alternative? You are at least able to grow it tax-free, and that's better than nothing. That is absolutely better than nothing. But is it better than the alternative, which is your plain old regular taxable account? Okay, and so many people forget the taxable account. Remember, the taxable account is really the default account. All of those other special accounts are really just buckets that have limitations on the amount that you can contribute and have special strings attached, okay? So they give you a little bonus, but they also tie a string to it, okay? So your taxable account is your regular alternative. Now, remember what I told you, we don't tax the same dollar twice. And people say, well, investors get it better because they don't have to pay nearly the same amount of tax as somebody who's earning wages. Well, that's true, but it's not necessarily a fair comparison because the investor had to get money at the beginning from somewhere. They had to earn wages, okay? So once you earn the wages, which are at the highest brackets potentially, then your money is after tax. So then you get the privilege of investing that money and having the favorable tax brackets applied. The favorable tax brackets are the capital gains brackets, which are 0, 15, 20, or up to 23.8%. For interest is taxed at your marginal rate, so that doesn't really get favorable tax treatment, okay? But dividends are also taxed at the same brackets that long-term capital gains are, 0, 15, 20, 23.8%. Actually, I think 20 and 23.8% are the same now with the new tax law. But basically, it gets capped off at the 23.8%, which is a much lower cap than the marginal tax rates, the regular ordinary income tax brackets that get up to around 40. Okay. Another big advantage of having taxable money from a strictly tax perspective, not necessarily just because you have more flexibility with how you invest it, but you have the opportunity to do what we call tax loss harvesting. So if the value of the money in your taxable account goes down, you can harvest a loss. You can basically swap out an equity with another similar but different equity, harvest the loss basically because you're selling it for less than you bought it for, and you report that on your taxes as losing money. Well, when you report that loss, you basically offsets other income at your highest tax bracket. So that can be very valuable. You can only write off $3,000 of losses in a particular year, but if your losses are more than that, you just carry them over, okay? And this is one of the reasons why Roth accounts I'm just not that excited about in general, because you protect your gains, but you lose the benefit of the opposite. So a Roth is great if it always is going up, but if it goes down, you don't get the benefit of tax loss harvesting. Okay, so there's a flip side to every coin. It may look good on the surface. They say, oh, tax-free gains, but that's assuming it goes up. Okay, so your after-tax account is really the worst place that you can have money sitting. It's great to grow tax-free, but all of those gains will come out as ordinary income. And you don't need to have more ordinary income when you're retired. You might as well just have it in your taxable account and pay your favorable rates of dividends and capital gains. And this is all based on current tax law. And you know, when you retire, who knows what the tax law is going to be? Capital gains could be taxed at different brackets. Dividends could be taxed differently. Interest could be taxed differently. Everything can change. Okay. And again, I'm just gonna take a side comment. This is all again for just fun entertainment purposes. This is not I'm not giving financial advice. I'm not legally a financial advisor. I'm not certified in any way to give actual financial advice. I'm just we're just talking here. Okay. So that after-tax account is in general the worst place I feel like you could put any dollars. Okay, it comes with the strings of having a retirement account. For example, you can only take out after 59 and a half and have, if you wait till 59 and a half, you have no problems. If you do it before 59 and a half, you face the risk of having to pay the 10% early withdrawal penalty unless you do some other things, which you can do to offset, and you can get some money out before the 59 and a half rule. Okay, and actually the 59 and a half rule is an overall rule for IRAs and for work accounts if you're working there. But once you have separation of service, age 55 is actually the cutoff. So a lot of people will tell you, oh, just roll your money into an IRA. But if you're planning on retiring early at 55, you don't necessarily want to do that. Leave it there. And then at 55, start withdrawing from that tax-free. And then when you're 59 and a half, feel free to roll that over to an IRA if you care to, okay? So when is the one time that after-tax investing would really be worth pursuing? And that's if, I am not going to give medical advice because I'm not licensed in every place this is being broadcast either. I know, so many restrictions. So, after-tax 401k, if your account allows you to do what we call in-service distributions, okay, or in-service rollovers into a IRA of the after-tax component, that after-tax component, because it has been taxed, can be rolled into a Roth IRA. Okay, there's no such thing as an after-tax IRA. IRA is only two flavors, okay, pre-tax and Roth, two, okay, as opposed to the 401k with the three flavors. So if that orange popsicle gets rolled out to the IRA with the two flavors, it has to go to one or the other. If it's post-tax money, it goes to the Roth. If it was the gains, which haven't been taxed yet, that would get rolled over into the pre-tax IRA. Okay, so ideally, if you have one of these 401ks that allows in-service rollovers into an IRA, then once you put it in there, you do that in-service distribution or in-service rollover, and that's what we call the Mega Backdoor Roth IRA, because you're getting it into a Roth IRA, and you're not putting it directly. You're going through a different route, which is backdoor. The regular backdoor Roth IRA is only $5,500 a year, but this is potentially a lot more. So the maximum amount that a 401k can have in contributions for people under 50 is $55,000. $18,500 is pre-tax component, and the other remainder is basically, it could be employer match, or it could be after-tax contributions. So $36,500 could potentially go in as after-tax, and then you could potentially roll that $36,500 into your Roth IRA. So that's like getting 6 to 7 backdoor Roth IRAs done all at once. Okay, so that's great. You can then throw in a huge chunk of money into your Roth IRA. For this particular person, it's 6% of his income. If we assume he's making $300,000, that'll be $18,000. So he'd get $18,500 into the 401k pre-tax, $18,000 into the 401k post-tax. He'd roll that 401k post-tax into a Roth IRA. He would also be able to do the regular backdoor Roth, $5,500 into a traditional IRA, and then do a Roth conversion of that. And then that would also be in the Roth IRA. So he would end up with $18,000 plus $5,500, $23,500 in Roth IRA money. He'd have $18,000 of pre-tax 401k money. So combining those together, that's $41,500. And he wants to invest $50,000 a year for retirement. That means he has another $8,500 to put into a taxable account. Okay, so if you're not allowed to do in-service distributions, then I would absolutely not put money into a post-tax 401k. I would just put that into a regular taxable account. Now, the continuation questions, okay, if I want to retire earlier than 59 and a half, does this change my choice? Well, I did mention that if the money's inside of a 401k, then and you leave your job at age 55, you can take it all without any penalty whatsoever. So it depends how early. That's one thing. Okay. Now, you can always pay the 10% extra penalty. Now, people call it a penalty. It's really just an extra tax. If we think of every time you pay a penny in tax as a penalty, then we're all paying penalties all the time. It's going to the same place. The same person's receiving it. You can call it tax. You can call it penalties. It's the same money. So I just call it extra 10% tax. So for high earners, they added another tax a few years ago under the Obama administration called the NIIT, which I mentioned yesterday, the net investment income tax. That's 3.8% on top of all investment earnings for all investments as an additional tax for people whose income is high enough. So it's just like a bonus tax. We don't call it the high income investor penalty. It's just they call it another tax. Okay, so you could just pay an extra 10% tax, and that is one thing that can be done. You can also do what's called substantially equal periodic payments, SEPP. 72T rule, where they look at how many years you have until retirement, and you can come up with a number and you pull that amount out every year. I am not an expert on that, so don't quote me on anything along those lines. But there are a number of ways to pull money out of a retirement account prior to retirement age. Mad Scientist probably has the most referenced post on this. It's excellent. I will link to that in the show notes. They always say on podcasts. I'll put it here in the comments at some point. But again, if this isn't a taxable account, then there is no age restriction. There is no string attached as to when you pull it out. And so if you want to retire early, that may be one reason to consider putting it in the taxable account instead, but I would use the other ones first because there are ways to get it out without paying an extra tax. And remember, if there is a tax advantage for it being there, that tax advantage can more than make up for the extra tax you might have to deal with when you pull it out later. Contributions to accounts are always able to be pulled out penalty-free early, but they often have what we call a 5-year rule where it has to kind of sit there for five years. It's kind of like a seasoning period that we use that term in real estate. But the money has to be seasoned for like 5 years before you can pull out. There's a whole long list of confusing rules on that. But if you do want to retire early, you should have a plan of how you're going to get money from your retirement accounts. And sometimes paying the 10% penalty actually is just worth it because you're getting it out at such a lower bracket. So you really have to do the math on what you think is going to get pulled out at versus what it's going to go in at and what it's going to get taxed in as while it's there and how long it'll be there. Okay. Now, if I picked a Vanguard Index Target Retirement Fund for my 401k, which is fine. That's probably if you're going to have a target date retirement fund, a Vanguard Index is probably the best one to have, especially if you're years from retirement. It's basically 60% total U.S. stock market, 30% total international stock market, and then it's 10% bonds, and I think it's maybe 6% U.S. bonds and 4% international bonds, but a 90-10 stock bond split. Should I invest my after-tax dollars into a more risky fund, being that I'm only 30 years old? Well, first of all, a target date retirement fund, if he's 30 years old, if he put in a target date retirement fund of 15 years or later from now, it's going to be 90% equities. So I don't know what would be more risky, so to speak, other than like 100% equities, which is not much different. So you're already pretty much all capped out at almost all equities, most likely, unless you chose a target index retirement fund for less than 15 years. Okay. Now, in general, I think people should think about their entire portfolio as a whole. Think about your overall asset allocation and then decide where you want to put different pieces based on the way they're taxed, okay, but also B, where you're willing to accept volatility versus not. So for example, in our taxable account, I would rather have, if I had to put, let's pretend 40% of my portfolio in bonds, I personally would put as much bonds as I can in my taxable account. And I would usually do municipal bonds because they would be tax-free. But I like to have less volatility in my taxable account because I'm an opportunistic investor. When I see an opportunity, I want to have the capital to put that money out. And so that pile of money, I'd rather have less volatile so that the capital is more available if needed. So if I had, let's say, 200,000 in my taxable account, and there's an opportunity where I need the full 200,000, well, I'll be very glad the full 200,000 is there. If I had that all in equities, well, the next day that 200,000 could be 180,000, and I wouldn't be able to do the deal. Okay, so there are a lot of different things I think about when I think about location, but in general, I keep all of my equities in my investment accounts, and I would put more bonds in my taxable account. And that's how I personally choose to do it. Now, so choose your overall allocation and look at it that way. But you're basically going to be likely 90% equities no matter how you do it if you're already in a target date fund more than 15 years out. Okay. And I think that's it. The guy wants to pay off the student loans in 5 years. So let's just do the math on this. If he's got $200,000 of loans, and let's pretend he refinances that to like 3%. So he'll be paying $12,000 of interest the first year. So he'll be paying, let's pretend, around $45,000 a year for 5 years. And also wants to put $50,000 a year into retirement. So 45,000 and 50, that's 95,000. and then has $300,000 of earnings, well, you're going to be able to shelter some money from taxation, just about $18,000, but you're still going to end up with basically $280,000 of taxable income. And I don't know what state you're in, but that's going to generate a lot of income tax. So $280,000, you're not going to hit the 300. You're not going to hit the 32% bracket if you're married and your income is that much. Ryan Inman, welcome from the Financial Residency podcast and Facebook group. Thank you for coming here, Ryan. So I was talking about the tax bracket this person would be in. So if he is making $300,000, the cutoff for the 32% bracket for married people is $315,000 of taxable income, which is really about $340,000, or if you consider the standard deduction on top of that. So if he's able to stay under the 32% bracket, he won't be getting taxed any more than 24%. Probably about 20% of his income will be taxed. So he'll still be probably paying around $50,000 or more in income tax. So I start out with $300,000, put $50,000 to retirement, putting $42,000, I think we said, to the student loans. Or said 45,000, so 95,000. Put another then you're also going to pay another 30,000. So it's like about 60,000. Let's say 50,000 in income tax. So basically, half of the money is gone, and then he still has $150,000 left for spending, including paying down the house in 15 years. So I think that's very doable. I think for anybody finishing residency, if you can. If you limit your lifestyle inflation on the front end, that's the most valuable thing you can do. It doesn't really matter as much where you invest your money or where you put it. It's just if you can put that money to good, paying down debt, investing it, anywhere on the good side is better than spending it. Because if you keep that lifestyle inflation down, then you don't need as much to retire. I think for anybody who's a physician, really, there's no reason why you can't aim for a 50% savings rate, especially coming out of training, because your income is going to go up, take home pay well more than 50% or more than 100%. It's going to go up. So if you just limit how much you inflate your lifestyle from residency, that's very doable. So congratulations on getting your job, asking a really, really good question, and having very clear-cut goals. You're going to do awesome. So that is it. I can't believe I spent 37 minutes on basically just one long question. Are there any other questions in the queue? All right. So I thank you guys all for coming here today. I'm going to continue trying to do these as much as I can. And we'll see how this goes. These will be saved to my Facebook wall. Feel free to share them if you like them, if you know anybody that could benefit from the information. Eventually, I hope to have these brought over to YouTube or potentially a podcast so that people can listen to them while they're driving. And next time around, I'm going to try to utilize a digital whiteboard so I can maybe do some drawing. So we'll see how this goes. Dr. Paul Judge, did you just finish residency? I think you did, ENT residency. So super big congratulations to you. And you can grab this afterward. And for people who are starting training, you guys all have different retirement account options available to you. I did a post on my blog, 39point6.com, yesterday about pension versus a 403b. A lot of people at universities have that option, so I would lead you to that. I'm going to do a post on all the U-Texas options, which, as I mentioned earlier, has $73,500 that you can tax defer. So that's gigantic. You don't really need to save much outside of that for most physicians. So it's pretty awesome if you have access to a 457 and a full 403b. But if you have any questions about your accounts, feel free to send them over to me and I could put them on the next show. Thank you very much. And again, I'll close out with my parting thought from yesterday. Who do you work for?
Hey, let's get moving.
All right. Have a good night, guys, and hopefully see you tomorrow.